the incumbent, who most people felt was not the best person for the economy, actually won in the end. So we'll talk about why that happened. It was supposed to be high drama, but in the end, some are saying it was a blowout. Was it? We'll talk about that with our guests.
I spent election night at the very upbeat Romney headquarters. Or it started out upbeat anyway, up in Boston. And we basically, interesting feel in that room when things started out. You definitely got the sense that these were people who absolutely thought that Mitt Romney either was going to win or had a really, really good chance of winning. Women came out in very large numbers this year, and I think women, what happened is, toward the end of the campaign, issues that the Republican Party didn't necessarily want to come out front and center started to make headlines. And there were a lot surrounding women's issues having to do with contraception, abortion, rape, Roe v. Wade. Not the conversation Republicans wanted to have, but it was sort of headline grabbing, and I think that women, as Condoleezza Rice put it, were getting a lot of mixed messages about the women vote, and a lot of women just said, you know, I'm going to stick with the guy that I know on some of these issues. Bottom line, I think the Republicans are going to have to sort of spend a lot of time trying to figure out how they go forward in all this.
So, this was a cycle that reinforced that, yes, we are a blue state. Now, moving quickly to the Senate race, there are a million things you can look at in that race, or perhaps 100 million. But in the end, it was all of Linda McMahon's spending, all the resources that she put into a very substantial ground game. I mean, these guys really did a smart campaign as far as get out the vote effort. They did they established a network of field offices that the party has not had in a long, long time. But in the end, she ended up exactly where she was 2 years ago. Magic number for her seems to be 43%. In hindsight, everything is very clear. In hindsight, no Republican was going to take that race, not with an 18-point margin with a Democratic president. In the 4th district, down in Fairfield, when Jim Himes won in 2008, there were 17 communities down there. Himes won only 3 of them. Now, Bridgeport, Stamford, and Norwalk. Those huge, huge margins in 2008 that President Obama pulled out is what put Jim Himes in office over Chris Shays. This time, Jim Himes won, I think it was 11 of the 17. Jim Himes carried Greenwich. That's where the Republicans are in the 4th district right now. Jim Himes is pretty much there as long as he wants to be. So that's 4 of the 5 off the table for the Republicans.
And because of the fact that this is a blue state, naturally, Obama did very well here. And Chris Murphy, as you know, used one of the ads in his Senate campaign with Obama during his campaign cycle. Not unusual. But what was unusual, I think, was that Linda McMahon used Obama in her ads. And I don't think I've ever seen that before. And I remember sitting in the newsroom and seeing voters talking about how they were going to vote for Obama and McMahon. And all of us were like, is that genius or craziness? We really couldn't figure that out. The Senate race was probably one of the nastiest, most expensive races that I've covered. And I think Mark is very right. She did cap out at 43%. She did very well, Linda McMahon, probably up until the last 2 or 3 weeks before the election. The polls started to show that her numbers were not as good. Chris Murphy liked to attribute that to the debates, which I would think would probably be an accurate assessment. I think once voters got a chance to see outside of that realm, outside of what you saw in a box on your TV, see the candidates, I think that made a difference. The other interesting race that I covered was Andrew Rohrabach and Elizabeth Esty. I think that was a very tight race. Elizabeth Esty capitalized on some things that I think Alison King mentioned that we saw not just in the congressional races, but the Senate race and the presidential races, and that is the Democrats feeling that Republicans would align themselves with more conservative beliefs once they were elected. In fact, John Boehner, I believe, was in this very room. I know he was here at the Hartford Club raising money for Andrew Rohrabach maybe about a month ago. And Elizabeth Esty used that to say that, you know, even though Andrew Rohrabach, who was pro-choice and had always been bipartisan when he was a state lawmaker, once elected, he would feel the need to bend to more conservative beliefs. And that seemed to resonate in many elections, I felt. And I think Alison is absolutely right. I think the Republican Party has to come to some understanding of where their beliefs are and how they can work across party aisles.